Vote on the Labor leadership will be held on Monday morning. The Prime Minister announced the ballot while launching an attack on Kevin Rudd for leading a paralysed and chaotic government.
Labor's bitter divisions are on public display as never before, and only Tony Abbott's laughing.
Maybe they heard Julia Gillard's hitmen are after him. Armed to the teeth security men surrounded Kevin Rudd as he changed planes at Dallas-Fort Worth on the way home from Washington after dramatically quitting as Foreign Minister. A few hours earlier, a grim-faced, steely Prime Minister strode out to a news conference to announce the terms of Labor's leadership showdown.
I have decided that at 10 a.m. Monday morning a ballot for the Labor leadership will be conducted. Following Kevin Rudd's resignation yesterday, I have formed this view that we need a leadership ballot in order to settle this question once and for all.
Ms Gillard said Labor's leadership squabble had obscured the government's achievements for too long. At his news conference, before leaving the US capital, Mr Rudd said he'd phoned many caucus colleagues overnight and been pressed to run.
Their overall argument to me is that they regard me as the best prospect to lead the Australian Labor Party successfully to the next elections, to save the Australian Labor Party at those elections, and to save the country from the ravages of an Abbott government.
He wouldn't formally declare he's a candidate, saying he needs to consult more back in Australia, but this gave a fair indication of his intentions.
I do not believe that Prime Minister Gillard can lead the Australian Labor Party to success in the next election. That is a deep belief. I believe it's also a view shared right across the Australian community.
Ms Gillard disagreed, saying Labor can win as long as Monday's ballot ends the leadership rivalry permanently.
If, against my expectation, I do not receive the support of my colleagues, then I will go to the backbench and I will renounce any further ambition for the Labor leadership.
She called on Mr Rudd to give the same undertaking and rule out a second leadership challenge down the track if he fails to get his old job back this time.
Australians are rightly sick of this and they want it brought to an end.
Gillard backers last night launched a scathing personal attack on Mr Rudd.
I've frankly been shocked and disappointed by the tone and content of the intensely personal attacks which have been lodged against me overnight in Australia. I would say to you, and I would urge my own supporters in Australia, not to retaliate, not to engage in this sort of vicious personal attack. I don't believe it has a proper place in Australian politics. But in Australia today, people are sick and tired of the politics of division. The bottom line is this question of the future of the leadership of our party and our country is not about personality. It's about trust. It's also about policy, and it's about vision.
But Ms Gillard backed the charge of sabotage in the last election campaign.
We were in a winning position in that campaign until the sabotage that knocked that campaign very, very solidly.
She said there'd been a long-running campaign to destabilise her since then, and she justified her toppling of Mr Rudd from the Prime Ministership 20 months ago by saying the government had been paralysed and chaotic under his leadership.
It was very, very focused on the next news cycle, on the next picture opportunity, rather than the long-term reforms for the nation's interests.
Mr Rudd also harked back to the coup that brought him down, saying Labor needed to reform to break the power of the faceless men.
When this comes to a head, it really does need to be recognised that the future government of Australia is not about the power of factions, it's about people's power. And the people of Australia have a view on the future leadership of their country.
Even though they're confident Mr Rudd doesn't have the numbers to win on Monday, Gillard backers are out to crush him in the ballot. We want to drive a stake through his heart this time, one of them told me today. A series of pro-Gillard ministers is being wheeled out to keep up the attack.
Kevin Rudd had contempt for the Cabinet, contempt for the Cabinet members, contempt for the caucus, contempt for the Parliament.
One face being shown to the Australian people, but a very different man in private.
But this afternoon, 3 ministers emerged to declare they'll vote for Mr Rudd.
I am convinced that he is the best person to lead Labor to a victory at the next election. He has overwhelming public support.
It is my opinion that The man has a great breadth of vision and a commitment to the future of this country.
Resources Minister and left-wing elder statesman Martin Ferguson warned that the personal attacks on Mr Rudd helped Mr Abbott.
All we are doing is creating the fodder for the Liberal Party advertisements for the next election. Mark my words, it's all been recorded.
The opposition leader is laughing. And who can blame him? Laurie Oakes, 9 News.
A Nine's Denham Hitchcock sat next to Kevin Rudd on the flight from Washington to Dallas and filed this report.
Kevin Rudd was a little nervous when I sat down next to him, but don't forget, I've spent 4 days chasing him and he spent 4 days mostly avoiding me. He did look a little tired, but it has been a big 24 hours for him. It all started with that 1 a.m. press conference. They then spent a day examining the fallout, another talk to the media, a rush to the airport, jump onto the plane, of course, to find me there. We spoke about family, football, travel, and of course, politics. And incredibly, he said he's relaxed about the storm that he's flying into. He is on that flight now from Dallas to Brisbane, and he has 18 hours of thinking time.
Well, Lane Calcutt joins us now from Kevin Rudd's electorate at Bulimba.
And Lane, you've been on Anna Bligh's campaign trail for a week now. What impact is it likely to have?
Well, Melissa, until about this time yesterday afternoon, it was going pretty well. But the trouble is, this leadership crisis is just swamping the campaign now. And the trouble for Anna Bligh is her message will be drowned out for at least the next week.
Oh, it's a mess.
On the street and on the campaign, the fallout from Kevin Rudd's bombshell.
There's no doubt it makes it harder, but that doesn't mean you give up.
As I said clearly in my statement the other night, was to take the federal matters off the agenda so that Anna gets clear air to run her own election campaign.
The Premier was in Cairns to announce a new $32 million special school, but her campaign took another hit. Strategist Bruce Hawker, the man behind Kevin 07, has jumped ship to Team Rudd.
I don't think it's appropriate that he be working on my campaign while he does that.
I think Anna Bligh has been adversely affected by all the talk of leadership in recent days. So it's been a complicating factor, but I don't think it's been fatal to the Labor government's prospects in Queensland.
Never best friends, but now worst enemies. Deputy Prime Minister Wayne Swan slamming his Nambour High schoolmate as dysfunctional, demeaning.
The truth is that Prime Minister Rudd is deeply flawed. He has great weaknesses.
Rudd can count on Therese Rain at least, urging those who support her husband to dial a poly.
Tell their local MP, if that's a Labor MP, and to tell their local Labor senator, look, this is what I want.
Former Premier and 9 News election commentator Peter Beattie says if Labor's to survive both in Queensland and around the country, the matter must be done and dealt with.
We're hemorrhaging. There's no two ways about this. The Labor Party campaign for re-election at a state level is just bleeding. I've never seen a campaign like this. It is extraordinary and it's historic, but it's also sad.
As questions over his motives and his numbers continue, one thing's for sure. When Kevin Rudd lands back in Brisbane tomorrow, he'll have to face the music.
I'm looking forward to him coming home and we'll have a chat.
Now, this may not be very scientific, but we asked 20 voters in Logan today who they want to be Prime Minister. Here's what some of them had to say.
He should have had his term the first time around, so I believe he should have another chance.
Pushed out in not a fair way, and I think he did better than what she's done.
He shouldn't have got ousted in the first place.
Now, Kevin Rudd is a Queenslander, of course. They'd expect him to be more popular here, but of those 20 we asked, 15 said they want him to be Prime Minister. Andrew, Melissa, only 2 said Julia Gillard.
Yeah, interesting times ahead, Lane. Thank you.